Hello, hello, hello. Aurelia Davis here on a Tuesday. Just coming to you to say hello and see how everybody is doing. Aurelia Davis, the educator's educator. Just loving it to be able to come and talk to about very important subjects in the field of education. But before we get into that, I want to know, have you been able to go over to aureliadavis.com and click on the Thrive Retreat? That's a question. Have you been able to go over to aureliadavis.com and click on the Thrive Retreat? After you click on the Thrive Retreat, you'll see some very, very valuable information for teachers and educators, for educators. And that information meaning that we're going to be having a retreat that's going to take place in Tulum, Mexico on July 30th through August 4th. And it's for educators to come and share and just relax and just to rejuvenate yourselves from the year that you've been teaching, this year. And basically being able to do some sharing, to eat some good food, to relax, do some yoga, go on some excursions around that particular area in Tulum, and just being able to just de-stress from everything that you've been through this year, from September up until June. And in fact, teachers, is almost over. So congratulations if you've been able to stay this long. I congratulate you. I really congratulate you. But if you have not yet, go over to the my website, aureliadavis.com, and click on the Thrive Retreat and register and just see what we have for you. You'll be very, very, very happy about what you see there. Okay. On yesterday, I talked about student behavior. And I'm coming back today with almost like a part two, and as far as what is being done to to be in control of what's happening with students as far as their behavior is concerned. Well, there has been quite a few trainings going on throughout the United States, and it might even be taking place outside of the United States, where teachers are being trained on how to restrain students. I'll say that again. Teachers and educators, I believe, just personnel within the building is being trained on how to restrain students. And when you talk about restraining someone, you're talking about keeping them from doing something, keeping them from doing something. And in this case, we're talking about children putting bodily harm on themselves or someone else. And it can be very, very serious. It is very, very serious. I've seen YouTubes on children, on students throwing chairs and just picking up and just destroying a room. Well, at the same time, that's not acceptable. We know that's not acceptable, but during that time, if they're not even hurting someone else, they can be easily hurting themselves. And that's something that has to be dealt with. And that individual or that educator or that adult that's in that room needs to know has to be trained on how to keep that from happening. And I guess they're talking about the physicalness of children just lashing out and hitting and punching and you kicking and all of those types of things. So trainings are taking place on how teachers can keep this from happening. And at the same time, I remember when I started teaching and I talked to my principal and he was interviewing me. And more than anything else, he told me, he said, I don't know if anybody's ever told you this. He said, but when I talk to teachers and whatever, and just to let you know, children were fighting back in the 1980s and the 90s too. They were still fighting. It wasn't as serious to the point where they were kicking teachers and throwing things, but they were throwing things, but it would never get to that level. I don't remember it being reported at that level. And so in the meantime, we have children that are doing this, and a lot of the information that's coming across is that these are the after effects of the pandemic. These children are having the after effects after the pandemic. This is the results of the pandemic, or what they were not able to get when they were locked up during the pandemic, or what they witnessed during the pandemic. So you think about those children that lost loved ones during the pandemic, and we're not talking about one or two loved ones. We're talking about 3 and 4, 5, 6 family members from the pandemic. That is tragic. That is tragic. And at that particular time, if a child wasn't allowed to grieve or go through the grieving process, eventually that type of a negative behavior is going to come out of that particular child or that particular student. And then you talk about the children being just locked up in their homes, during the pandemic and not being able to go out or visit friends or go to stores and things like that. We all felt something after the pandemic, and it has not gone away yet. So we just need to be very cognizant that things are happening still because of the pandemic. But going back to my story, at that particular time when I was applying for a job at the school where I ended up working for a long period of time, the principal told me, he said, "You know what? I don't know if anyone has ever told you this in your college coursework or whatever, in your college, taking your college courses and whatever." He said, "But you never, ever try to break up a fight between two students. You never, ever try to break up a fight between two students." And because I was a brand new teacher, I felt he gave me this information for my safety and because of union rules and so on and so forth. And he told me, he said, "First of all, you might get hurt. You might get hurt." And eventually, it's the type of thing where you think that you are strong enough. But when these children, if they have an agenda or they are so angry that you really can't stop them. You really can't stop them from doing what they do. And I've seen that happen. I've seen that happen where children were so angry and fighting and whatever, they could not control themselves. Even though they may have thought about it and wanted to try to control themselves, they could not control themselves, and neither could the individuals that were standing around them control them. So he said, "You never try to break up a fight between two students." And he said, "Now, if you see an issue where there's an argument," he said, "it's best for you to try to de-escalate the argument before it turns into a fight." So he gave me back the authority to interrupt two students arguing and looking like they're heading into a physical altercation. But he said, "But if the physical altercation is happening, don't you try to break it up, because first of all, you could get seriously hurt." And that has happened throughout the years too, where teachers have gotten seriously hurt trying to break up fights between students. And he said, then if you do get hurt, because it's on the rule book with it, because it's on the rule book with the union, you may not get compensated. You will probably not get compensated because it's something you did. So I had real issues with that because I never did want to see anyone sort of beat somebody down. But at the same time, because my job, that was not my job. And so what he would do is he said, what you do is you will call security or call, a couple of individuals that was in the building to tap into those particular situations at the time and let them do what they need to do. But don't you, as a female, that's what he said, as a female, you try to stop the fight. He said, because most likely you'll get hurt. And then there's some kind of rule where there's no compensation for you getting hurt because you should have not try to break up the fight in the first place. So those are the things that I heard. And after a while, I felt as an educator that I should have more control as an educator, that first of all, I didn't want to see any of my children fighting. And I've witnessed some fights when I first started teaching. I did witness some fights, and I even tried to stop one fight. And I almost got thrown over on the side, and I had to stop myself. And then I did call for help. Well, what's happening now, and I don't know if it's the point where there's not enough security around or enough adults around that are handling situations like that, but they're training teachers on how to restrain students. Now, in the meantime, I would love to have been a fly on the wall to see what that looks like. But I know that CPS had a deadline to get that that training done August 21st, 2023. And I do understand that they met their deadline. And then in another state, the school district was asking the union to, I guess, demand teachers to take this training. Now, when you're looking at this training, you may have some teachers that say, I don't need that because I'm in control. Well, teachers, you have to realize there's the control goes so far, and then you're no longer in control. And more than anything else, you have to learn how to protect yourself, physically protect yourself. You can protect yourself with the verbal abuse and so on and so forth, but the physical abuse is hard. And I don't mean to be funny, but we're older than these children, and they are a lot stronger than we are. They are a lot stronger than we are. I remember doing some mentoring, I would say about 5 or 6 years ago. And I was
Mhm.
mentoring in a preschool. I was mentoring in a preschool. I was mentoring in a preschool. And at that particular time, we had some preschoolers, preschoolers that were pretty violent, pretty violent. And I think I even talked about preschoolers biting and fighting and throwing things and just having tantrums. Now we're calling them tantrums in preschool because they're babies and we don't think they know any better. But at the same time, you still have to learn how to restrain that child or keep that child from hurting himself. And I even talked to an expert in early childhood, and she said that some of the children that are coming around now, and I call them pandemic babies, coming around now are having sensory issues. They're having sensory issues. That means that she told me that basically when a child gets to a point where they have to bite you, if they're biting you, then most likely they cannot verbalize what they're trying to say. And I've even been noticing that even though some of our babies are a little bit more mature, we're talking about 3-month-old and rolling over and sitting up and things like that. The physical development is on point, but they're saying that sometimes the verbal development has not been in place yet. So if you find a child striking out and hitting, or either he can't express himself in words because his vocabulary hasn't really fully developed, or you maybe not have anybody, he may not be talking to anybody because most of our children are basically looking at television, and those televisions and those cartoons and things do not talk back. So the verbal, oh boy, I'm getting into something totally different here. So the verbal development is not where it needs to be. It's not where it needs to be. Children need to be talked to so they can talk back to you. And if that's not developed enough, what you find children starting to do is that they'll start to strike out. And what a lot of toddlers have been doing is biting. When they couldn't express themselves verbally, then they would bite. They would bite. And it's an aggressive move because then they immediately get your attention. They immediately get your attention. So it's a lot of things that are playing into this whole dynamic of behavior, student restraints, behavior modification. And then we bring in the social emotional part of it. So we're dealing with a lot of things that are basically our children are going through and our students are going through right now that they cannot handle. And it just puts more on us to try to figure out how we can help them fix it. Because if you are a lover of children, if you are a lover of education, then you want to give these kids as much as you can give them while you can give it to them to help them solve some of the problems. And I believe every once in a while they just sort of jet through things so fast that they really don't know. uh they attack things without thinking about the consequences of what if I attack this negatively, what's going to happen to me afterwards. So it gets into all of those types of things. Oh my goodness, this was a very passionate subject of mine, because I believe that if I was still teaching, I think I would like to take a class on restraints. and see exactly what it looks like. But at the same time, I would be very, 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 very interested in what took place before and what takes place after. Because after restraining a child, keeping them from hurting themselves or keeping them from hurting somebody else, then what do? You set them up for counseling. You sit down and you talk to them, because you're holding them, and basically when you're talking about restraint, you're talking about holding them around their arms so that they can't move. And it's a form of calming them down, helping them to calm down. That's what restraining is you're helping somebody to calm down. And so using that soft voice, I probably would add few more things to the training myself. I probably would. But it's serious. I laugh, but it's serious. I mean, because this is something that's going on, and it's not just in a few cities, it's all over the United States, and it's even happening outside of the country, where these children are basically just going berserk as far as behavior is concerned. And we as educators don't know what to do about it. But when it finally comes down to it, the child is important. And what's going to be best for the child is what is needed. And that's what I would do every time. Whatever is best for the child. It's not about me, it's about the child, why they acted out, what caused them to act out, what caused them to be disruptive. There's something in place that they cannot control that allows them to act the way they do. And we as educators not only are responsible for teaching them, but we're also responsible for finding out what makes them tick, what makes them smile, what makes them sad, because they're with us so many hours of the day. We have to be in their lives. We are in their lives. And you would be surprised. Well, you wouldn't be surprised. They're depending on us for their survival. They are depending on us for their survival. And if you're an educator, you will be responsible for their survival. I know when I taught, I was, and I enjoyed it. And I just hope all of the students that I did teach are in a good place and are in a good, happy place in their lives at this particular time. Well, this is Aurelia Davis, the educator's educator, coming to you one more time on a Tuesday. April. We're in April. Teachers, is almost over. So get ready to relax. Get ready to go to our Thrive Retreat, July 30th through August 4th in Tulum, Mexico. And we're waiting for you to just come on and jump on board and just register and just come have a good time with us. Oh my goodness, talking about relaxing on the beach and closing your eyes to the sun. That feels good. This is Aurelia Davis, the educator's educator, coming to you one more time. Have a good evening, and I'll talk to you soon.